بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه رحمكم الله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Now, last lesson we were speaking about the deeds that person should perform when a particular believer is passing away in front of them. And before we got into that, we mentioned a tradition by Imam Ali alayhi salam that held an admonishment. The tradition basically was a dialogue between Imam alayhi salam and the person who already had passed away. The Imam went to a graveyard or passed by a graveyard or multiple graveyards, and then he addressed the dead. And subhanAllah, with Allah's permission, one of the people responded to the Imam, obviously in a way that other people could hear, normal people could hear. And the Imam alayhi salam, obviously the Imam had questions for that person, the person answered, and then the Imam salamullah alayhi told the people, did you hear the response? Get ready for death. تزودوا فإن خير الزاد التقوى. Prepare your provisions, for the best provision is at-taqwa, is piety, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously, when we say the Imam had questions, it doesn't mean that he did not know the answers to those questions. A person or someone who asks a question might ask it, although he already knows the answer. But he asks it for a particular wisdom, one of which is allowing the listeners to hear the answer. Jayyid, keep that in mind because it's very important and it helps us understand the words of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. Allah Ta'ala in the Quran asks Musa a question. وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ يَا Musa, right? What is in your right hand, O Musa? Allah Ta'ala obviously knows that it was the staff, but he was asking that question as a preparation for the call of Musa alayhi salam, which takes place after Allah tells him to throw the staff. So that being said, today inshallah we're going to carry on with the deeds that a person should perform when someone else is in ihtidar, meaning someone else is in that stage, the last stage in ad-dunya and the first stage amongst the stages of the hereafter in al-akhirah, and in the hereafter. And that is what we call al-ihtidar, also called sakrat al-maut, also called sakarat al-maut. All right, so there are three words used in reference of that stage. We mentioned that there's one deed that is wajib, it's mandatory, based on mandatory precaution to make the person who's in ihtidar face the Kaaba. Okay, so you make him face the Kaaba. This is not only recommended, no, it's wajib based on mandatory precaution according to Sayyid al-Sistani Damudullah. Amongst the deeds that are recommended is a talqeen. Talqeen is mustahab. It's recommended to perform talqeen to the person who is about to pass away. Talqeen means what? Who can tell me what talqeen means?
I think it's framed in a way in which you ask a question, and then ask the full questions regarding the aqidah.
Okay. Hussein?
You ask him to repeat, or you ask him to say something that he knows already?
Ahsantum. So you don't ask him, rather you tell him. You tell him to utter the words of faith. So you tell him, for example, Fulan, let's say his name is Musa. Musa, repeat after me. Say, La ilaha illallah. Jayyid. Now, if he answers you and he says, La ilaha illallah, that's beautiful. If he doesn't, you continue doing talqeen. You continue doing talqeen. Say La ilaha illallah, say Muhammad Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And you also tell him to utter the names of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam as he expresses his belief in them. So, for example, you tell him, say Aliyun Waliyullah, or Aliyun Imami alayhi salam, Al-Hasan Imami, Al-Husayn Imami, Fatimatu al-Zahra Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, Ali ibn al-Husayn Zayn al-Abidin Imami, so on and so forth. So it is mustahab to tell him to utter, to express his faith in Allah Ta'ala and the Holy Prophet. So we tell him to say the shahadatain, the two testimonies. And it's also mustahab, recommended, to tell him to express his belief in Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim. يا حبيبي الهدي بس الشريط شكرا. All right, to express his belief in Ahlul Bayt one by one. For example, Aliyun Imami, Fatimatu al-Zahra Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, Sayyidati, Al-Hasan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba Imami. There are multiple things you could say. If you want, you can do talqeen in a short manner, and if you want, you can make it a bit longer. It all depends on how much details you want to mention. But talqeen in itself is mustahab, is recommended at that time. It is also recommended in two other moments, and those two are when the person is placed in their grave, right? Before bury them, before the sand or the dust or the soil is placed on top of the person, meaning before you close the grave, it's mustahab to do talqeen, and it's also mustahab to do talqeen when the person has already been buried and the people have left. Okay, his wali, meaning the person who is his guardian based on Islamic law at that specific point, his wali does talqeen for him after his burial. So those are three moments in which talqeen is mustahab. Hussein, you had a question?
Oh,
No? Yes.
The one that's done at the time when the most famous one, the one that's done at the time of burial, when the person is placed in their grave, it's recommended to tap their shoulder as you say that, even though that they're not obviously.
What I know is you move the shoulder. You move the person's shoulder.
Yeah,
Yes.
More symbolic as you would do for a live person to make them aware and
Yeah.
get their focus, get their attention.
Yeah.
I would, my friend, to get their attention.
Yes. Yes.
Is the talqeen on the two other occasions also in the same way? It's recommended to do it in the same way when the person is alive and about to die, to move their shoulder. And the third occasion that, well, you can't do it on the third.
The third occasion you can't because he's already buried. For the first occasion, not that I know of, unless we see a clear hadith saying that you move him, then you do it in that case. If not, I haven't seen any hadith saying that you do it when he's in ihtidar, that you move him in ihtidar. I haven't seen. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Right. So these are the three moments in which talqeen is mustahab. Number one, ihtidar, when the person is about to pass away. Number two, after he passes away, when he's placed in the grave, but the grave is not closed yet. And number three, after he's buried. Burial is done, okay? People have left. Now, wali al-mayyit does talqeen for that person. Here a question comes to mind, okay? And that is, what is the benefit of talqeen? What is the benefit of talqeen before he dies? And what's the benefit of talqeen after he dies? What do you think? Ghayur or Hussein, anyone?
I think in both situations, one of the benefits would be it turns the person's attention towards the Master and towards Allah.
Okay.
So, like, basically, yeah, just that's the benefit in and of itself.
Okay. So Ghayur is saying it turns the person's attention to Allah and to Ahl al-Bayt. So it reminds a person that he's in need of God, in need of the infallibles, alayhim wassalam, bi-idhnillah, with Allah's permission. Jayyid. Nice. Hussein?
So one thing I can think of is, so as he's dying, it's possible that at any point during that time he can go through adila, meaning shaitan, to try to get him one last time. So if you remind him, you know, التلقين بالشهادتين والإقرار النبي والنبي عليه السلام, that will hopefully help him in that scenario. Another scenario, as we learned from the story of Fatima bint Asad, is that after he's buried and Munkar and Nakir, right, come to question you, right, you sort of help him out in a way,
Ahsantum.
right? As Rasulullah says, "Qul ibnak," right?
Mhm.
Your son, when they asked, Munkar and Nakir asked her, "Who's your imam?"
Jayyid. So the benefit of talqeen when the person is about to die is, well, at least one benefit is Shaitan, la'anahullah, the devil, he or one of his helpers, they come to mislead the human being, right? To lead him into what we call adila. And adila, we've talked about adila before in our previous classes. So they come to the human being, Iblis or one of his friends, one of his helpers. He comes to the human being and tries to instill doubt in his heart regarding the truth. Possibly he'll try to instill doubt in our hearts regarding Allah Azza wa Jal. Doubts in Allah, or doubts in the Prophet, or doubts in Ahl al-Bayt salawatullah wa salamu alayhim. All right? Long story short, he wants the person to disbelieve or to doubt in the truth before he leaves this world. So when we do talqeen, if the person actually changes and disbelieves before he dies, it's called adila. Yeah. If he was a believer and he loses his faith before death, it's called adila. Yeah. The word is taken from adala. Adala means that he basically changed path or changed routes. Yeah. Okay. So one benefit behind the talqeen which is done during ihtidar is that you help that believer remain steadfast. You help him remain faithful. So you're basically counteracting what the shaitan is doing. Shaitan is trying to instill doubt. You're doing the opposite. You're telling him, you can do it. You're a mu'min. Say La ilaha illallah. Say Muhammad Rasulullah. Say Aliyun Waliyullah, etc. Now, as a side note, God knows what happens in the world of the unseen, right? The shaitan, we know that the shaitan, la'anahullah, does not like these words. He doesn't like the word La ilaha illallah, the word Muhammad Rasulullah, the word Aliyun Waliyullah. Perhaps when you're telling him to say these words, you uttering these words in the presence of that individual who's about to die, or him actually repeating these words, pushes away the devil, maybe. Right? We have a tradition saying that when the shaitan, la'anahullah, hears someone calling Ya Muhammad or Ya Ali, he melts like copper. And that's one of the benefits of naming your son Muhammad or naming him Ali. The name provides an amount of protection for that individual. It doesn't necessarily mean every Muhammad will go to heaven. No. You might have someone called Muhammad who's a criminal. The name is good, but the person is bad. You might have someone called Ali who's bad to the bone. He has nothing to do with Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. So the name is good and the person is bad. But the name gives protection to a certain extent to the human being. When the name is Muhammad or the name is Ali. So that's one benefit behind talqeen during al-ihtidar.
extend to the actual name, or does it extend to the alphabet as well? Like Mustafa, Murtaza.
Well, what I can confirm at the moment is what the narration confirmed. The narration basically says that Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, he saw a boy. He was going to visit a man who was sick, and this man was from the followers of the Imam. Now he sees a boy on his way to the man, and he asks him, "What's your name?" and asks him, "What's your kunya?" As far as I remember, I could be wrong. The name was Muhammad, and the kunya was Abu Ali, or it was the other way around. I forgot the exact narration, but I remember the kunya either had Ali or Muhammad in it, and the name had Ali or Muhammad. جيد? So here the Imam told him that you've been shielded. You have a strong shield against the shaitan because you have the name and the kunya. Yeah. So what I can say for sure, it applies to these two names, Muhammad and Ali. Makes sense? Meaning if someone has a kunya that has one of those two names, that also helps him. Yeah. Mahdi here has a question, a prayer for the dead. When we're praying for the dead, can we change the language? Mahdi, if you mean, can we supplicate for someone who died in our own languages? Yes, we can. If that's what you mean. يعني مثلا, we say, Fulan passed away, rahimahullah. Can I say, may Allah bless him? Yes, I can. Right? I can do dua for the person who passed away in my own language. That's fine. But if you mean Salat al-Mayyit, as far as I know, Salat al-Mayyit is done in Arabic. Can you change the language in Salat al-Mayyit? Can't say yes at the moment, but I have to double check. As far as I know, it's in Arabic, but I have to double check.
Sheikh, I have a question.
Yes, sister.
Can you اترحم على ميت if he's not a Muslim? I heard you مش لا يجوز.
الترحم على غير المسلم فيها شوي كلام. I'll get back to you on that one, inshallah.
Okay, إن شاء الله. شكرا.
Inshallah, no problem. طيب. Okay. Now, the benefit of doing talqeen when someone has already passed away is what? Is to help him with munkar and nakir. جيد? It's to help him with munkar and nakir. Alayhim as-salam. And those are the two angels who come and ask him questions at the time of death. In fact, the third talqeen we mentioned, the talqeen of the wali, after the person has been buried, that talqeen, based on a tradition by Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, exempts the person from being questioned by munkar and nakir. So it helps the deceased in that way, that he doesn't even encounter munkar and nakir. They don't come to him when you perform the third talqeen. Yes. No, we're talking about a believer here. A believer. Yeah. We're talking about a believer. The third talqeen, the talqeen that's done after the person is buried by his wali. Yeah. Okay.
Sheikh, is it for sure it will stop from him being approached by munkar by the malaika? Is it for sure? Well, it might.
Based on the traditions of Ahlul Bayt, it will exempt him from that stage of barzakh.
Okay.
Yeah. Or that stage in barzakh. Jay. Yes.
Right. So let's say someone's father passed away.
Mhm.
Can the son be considered the person that could do it the third time if he has no parents or anything?
Ahsant. Yeah. Okay. Let me share a tradition with you here. Yeah. Oh, sorry. It did not send me a notification. I can't see you. No. Ajib. Yes. Yes. Okay. So the hadith is in Al-Kafi. عن أبي عبد الله عليه السلام قال إذا حضرت الميت قبل أن يموت فلقنه شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وآله. It says if you are present beside someone who is dying before he dies, then do talqeen. Tell him to say the two testimonies. Tell him to say that he testifies that there is no God other than Allah. He is one without partners, and that Muhammad is his slave and messenger. So, for example, you tell him, Fulan, قل أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وآله. This is one tradition. We have another tradition here. This one is not from Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. It's found in Al-Kafi, but it's actually a story between someone who believed in Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam and someone who was saved by that believer. Let's read the narration and see exactly what happened between those two individuals. Now, this one speaks about not only the shahadatain, not only the two testimonies, but also about the imams, alayhim salam, and doing talqeen such that you tell the individual to express, to reveal his belief in the imams, alayhim as-salatu was-salam. There's a man called Abu Bakr al-Hadrami. He is the narrator. He says what happened with him. Hence I said it's not a narration from one of the imams, alayhim as-salam. Abu Bakr al-Hadrami says, مرض رجل من أهل بيتي فأتيته عائدة. One of my relatives, one of my family members got sick. So I came to him and visited him. I believe we know that when someone falls sick, when a Muslim falls sick, it's recommended to go and visit them, right? فقلت له يا ابن أخي إن لك عندي نصيحة أتقبلها. I told him, my nephew, I want to advise you, I want to give you a piece of advice. If I give it to you, will you accept it? Why is he saying this? Perhaps because not everyone accepts other people's advice. And giving advice in itself is a bit difficult, meaning they say in Arabic, النصيحة خشنة. A piece of advice is rough, meaning people don't accept advice easily. And sometimes you feel a sense of discomfort when someone gives you advice. So he tells him, أتقبلها, will you accept it? فقال نعم, he said yes. فقلت قل أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له فشهد لك. So I told him, Abu Bakr al-Hadrami, he says, I told him at that point, say, there is no God other than Allah, He is one without partners. So he said whatever he was told to say. He uttered the first testimony. It seems from the tradition that Abu Bakr al-Hadrami realized this person was on the brink of dying or could have been on the brink of dying. So he did talqeen. فقلت إن هذا لا تنتفع به إلا أن يكون منك على يقين. فذكر أنه منه على يقين. He told him, listen, this testimony will not benefit you. You've uttered your belief in the testimony. Yes, you've expressed your belief in it. But whatever you did will not benefit you unless you believe in it. Unless you believe that truly there is no God other than Allah Ta'ala. And in fact, unless you are certain, you have yaqeen, you're certain that there is no God other than Allah Ta'ala. At that point, this word will benefit you, which is the truth. Allah Ta'ala does not want us to simply utter the word of belief. He doesn't want us to simply believe. He wants us to be muqineen, people who have certainty in Him and His vicegerents, alayhimus salam. فذكر منه أنه على يقين. He told Abu Bakr al-Hadrami, I am certain that there is no God other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فقلت قل أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله فشهد بذلك صلى الله عليه وآله. So I told him, now say, I testify that Muhammad is his slave and messenger. And so he uttered that testimony. فقلت إن هذا لا تنتفع به حتى يكون منك على يقين فذكر أنه منه على يقين. Here Abu Bakr al-Hadrami repeated the same statement, telling him, this testimony will not benefit you unless you have yaqeen, you have certainty in it. You believe in it and you're certain that Muhammad is Allah's messenger and his slave, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. So he told him, I believe in it. And I have yaqeen, I have certainty in this testimony. فقلت. Now he went to Ahl al-Bayt. قل أشهد أن عليا وصيه وهو الخليفة من بعده والإمام المفترض الطاعة من بعده. So here I told him, say, I testify that Ali is his successor, the successor of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he is the caliph that comes right after him, and he is the imam whose obedience is a must, meaning the imam that must be obeyed by the Muslims after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he uttered that testimony. He repeated whatever he was told to say. فقلت له إنك لن تنتفع بذلك حتى يكون منك على يقين فذكر أنه منه على يقين. So here again Abu Bakr al-Hadrami repeated his statement, telling him this testimony will not benefit you unless you have certainty in it. So I told him, I'm certain. I believe, in fact, I am certain that Ali alayhi salam is the Imam after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He's the Caliph of the Prophet. Now realize here, whatever Abu Bakr al-Hadrami told him to say is quite detailed, right? He told him, say that Ali is the successor, he is the Khalifa, he is the Imam. Hence I told you, when you do Talqeen, you can do it by mentioning a minimal amount of words, and if you want, you can mention more words and more details. You can tell the person who's about to pass away, say Ashhadu anna aliyan waliyullah. Or you can tell him, say Ashhadu anna aliyan al-imam ba'da rasulillah, hujjatullahi ala khalqi, babu madinat al-ilm, and you go on. The list is long, right? It's up to you. Then again, you always have to think, I don't want to make whatever I'm doing difficult. I do not want to overburden the person who is about to die. The tradition then says, فشهد بذلك. Sorry, we read that part. Okay, so we told him he believes in it and he's certain in that testimony. ثم سميت الأئمة عليهم السلام رجلا فأقر بذلك. He says, then I mentioned the Imams one by one. Meaning he told him, utter your belief, express your belief in Al-Hasan. Say, Ashhadu anna Al-Hasan, for example, Hujjatullah ba'da Abi. Or Al-Hasan, Imam ba'da Ali. He said it. Say Al-Husayn, huwa al-Imam ba'da Al-Hasan. He said it. He went on mentioning the Imams one by one, alayhim salam, and the man would repeat after him. وَذَكَرَ أَنَّهُ عَلَى يَقِينٍ. And he mentioned to Abu Bakr al-Hadrami that he was certain in these Imams. He was certain that they were the Imams after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. فَلَمْ يَلْبَثِ الرَّجُلْ أَن تُوفِّي. Then only a little amount of time went by and the man passed away. فَجَزِعَ أَهْلُهُ عَلَيْهِ جَزَعًا شَدِيدًا. At that point, his family members and or his wife felt impatient. They began, crying, sobbing. They revealed impatience for his loss. قال فغبت عنهم. He says, then I went away and I held my distance for an amount of time. ثم أتيتهم بعد ذلك. Then I came to them. فرأيت عزاء حسنا. And I came to them this time, I saw that they were patient. When he passed away, they became impatient. Right? This is something that happens sometimes or many times. When people lose their relative, their loved one, they might, become impatient. So they don't only cry, they don't only, for example, sob. You might hear them yelling, screaming, maybe beating themselves. نحن طبعا we're told by Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam that we're allowed to cry. That's fine. But there are limits that you can't cross, even when you lose a family member. Impatience, revealing impatience for an ordinary person, a fallible human being, is not good. Crying is normal, but becoming impatient is not good. Whereas for Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam, impatience is needed. For the tragedy of Abi Abdullah, you should not be patient. You should be impatient. Hence, screaming for the Imam, sobbing for the Imam, beating yourself for the Imam is all accepted. In fact, you will be rewarded for that kind of impatience. Salamullahi alayka ya Abu Abdullah. So here, when he came back, he saw that they were patient. Question? Yes.
What do you mean exactly by exactly what you said?
Hassan, that's a clear form of impatience. When you slap yourself and scream and do such deeds, that's a form of impatience, right? Yeah. فقلت كيف تجدونكم. Here he asked them, how do you find yourselves, as in how are you? كيف عزاؤك أيتها المرأة. He addressed the lady who had lost her husband. He told her, describe your patience for me. How are you feeling? What is your state? What's going on? فقالت والله لقد أصبنا بمصيبة عظيمة بوفاة فلان رحمه الله. She told him, I swear by Allah, we've been afflicted with a great tragedy when Fulan passed away. May Allah bless him. وكان مما سخى بنفسي لرؤيا or لرؤيا رأيتها الليلة. But she told him, however, there's something that comforted me. There's something that helped me accept his demise. And that is a dream that I saw tonight. A dream that I saw on this night. فقلت وما تلك الرؤيا. I told her, what is this dream? قالت رأيت فلانا تعني الميت حيا سليما. She told him, I saw Fulan, the same person who had passed away. But he was alive in the dream. And he was salim, meaning he was at peace. He was fine. فقلت فلان. He asked him, is this you? Is this Fulan? قال نعم. He said, yes, it's me. فقلت له أما كنت مت. I told him, didn't you die? فقال بلى. He said, yes, I did die. ولكن نجوت. I did die, but I was saved. Meaning I was saved in the hereafter. بكلمات لقنيها أبو بكر. I was saved because of certain words that Abu Bakr told me to utter at the time of death. وَلَوْلَا ذَلِكَ لَكِدْتُ أَهْلَكَ. Had it not been for these words that Abu Bakr taught me, Abu Bakr al-Hadrami, we're not talking about Abu Bakr ibn Abi Quhafa, right? Had it not been for the words that Abu Bakr al-Hadrami taught me, Jayyid, and the words that I said before I died, I was on the brink of doom. لَكِدْتُ أَهْلَكَ. It was very likely that I would have been led to my doom. So we understand from this story that the talqeen at the time of death helps. The talqeen that a person does when you tell the person who's passing away to reveal his faith, to express his faith in Allah and Rasulullah and Ahl al-Bayt, that helps him. In fact, it might not only help him, it might save him from punishment in the hereafter. Jayyid. This is the story that I wanted to share with you. We still have a few other deeds that we need to mention, but inshallah we'll do that next week. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala al-Mustafa Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal farajahum ya kareem.